Hey guys, welcome to Rosie's Dessert Spot. In this tutorial I'll be demonstrating how to create this 3-tier half Lego half elegant wedding cake. It's a 12-inch cake board that I've got there and it's a 10-inch cake going on top. I always bake 2 cakes and then cut them in half, so I have 4 layers of cake in total and 3 layers of frosting. The white frosting that I've used here is my hybrid buttercream frosting. I'll have a recipe linked in the description box below this video. Fill in, make sure that it's nice and flat. So I do that I do that by going around with my spatula and flattening it out, keeping my spatula nice and steady and letting the turntable do all the work. Once all 4 layers of cake have been stacked, create a crumb coat. This is a thin layer of frosting that goes around the cake to trap in any crumbs. Go around with your bench scraper and then clean up that top layer by bringing the lip of frosting to the center. You could also use your scraper for this as well. Pop it into the fridge and let it set for at least 30 minutes or in your freezer for 10. Follow the same steps with the 6-inch layer and the 8-inch layer as well. I have cake boards under each cake the same size as the cake, and you're going to need that later on when we stack the tiers. Just creating the crumb coat for the 8-inch and also for the 6-inch. Once the crumb coat's nice and solid, you can go in with the final layer of frosting. Now because I've covered my cake with fondant, I've used chocolate ganache for this. I do have a recipe for chocolate ganache also listed in the description box below. Go around to clean it off, quite like you did with the crumb coat, but this time it's a much thicker layer. And instead of bringing that lip of frosting to the center, I'm going to leave it standing as it is. Back into the fridge they all go once they've been covered. And I'm taking a hot knife that I've run under some hot water, dried it off, and just trimming down that layer. This creates incredibly sharp edges. And then if there's any kind of frilly bits, just bring it in with your spatula. Keep your hand as steady as you can. Make sure that the knife is flush with the top of the cake. And let the turntable do all the work while you keep the knife steady. And the hot knife works well with this because the chocolate ganache will melt against it and there's less resistance. Pop your fondant over the top. This is Bakels fondant that I've used and it's rolled out to about 3 millimeters or so in thickness. Pushing out any air from the top and then undoing those pleats and pressing the fondant onto the cake. Go with your smoother to make sure it's all attached and bump free, and then chop off the excess. I like to clap 2 fondant smoothers at the very top edge to make it nice and sharp. And what I've actually done is I've used shortening around the icing. So all around the ganache I've applied a very thin layer of shortening, and this is going to help our fondant to stick. It's very, very forgiving as opposed to trying to use water. Follow the exact same steps for the other 2 tiers. Again, clapping the 2 fondant smoothers together at the very top to get the nice sharp edge. Now for the airbrushing. I've used Navy Blue by Americolor, and it's an airbrush range. And going in circular motions, try and get as even of a coverage as possible. Now my air gun isn't exactly, it's kind of broken. So it's not as fluid as you'd hoped or as even looking, but it did work. Just keep going around circular motions to try to get the most even coverage. Then I've gone in with a gold sheen, also by Americolor, and follow the same steps for all the other cakes. The further away you work from the cake, the less circles you'll kind of see. It'll be a lot more blended. Though it kind of happened that regardless of how far away I was from the cake, it didn't really work out as I had hoped, but it still worked out. For the very bottom cake, I'm going to pop in at least good 6 dowels, and you'll need more for the very bottom tier because it's going to support all of the weight, right? So it just makes sense to add a little bit more. I've cut baking paper the same diameter as the top, and I'm going to fold it in half and fold it in half the other way so I have a cross right in the middle. Poke through with a knife where the cross is, and that way you know exactly where dead center will be on your cake, and pop a very tall dowel in the center. I have a hole in each cake board at the very middle, And I'm just feeding that center dowel through the bottom of the board so I know my cake's going to be centered. Now for the fun part, we're going to start making it naked in just a section, cutting away with my knife. You can use an X-Acto knife, and then peeling off that layer of fondant. The top tier had 2 layers of fondant over the top. No particular reason, I just didn't get as nice of a finish the first time around, so I covered it a second time. Keep traveling down the cake, making this space larger and larger as you go down, so it looks like it's kind of opening up like a curtain would. And the great thing about the shortening is that we can easily take off that fondant from the ganache. If you were to use water, you'd struggle a lot more. Cut a ribbon to size and place it around each tier. And here I've got my colored fondant. So I've used yellow, green, blue, and red, and I'm just cutting out 5 centimeter long panels, and they're all the same thickness, the thickness of the ruler. Just made it a lot easier that way. You can cut across with your knife, you can cut across with a bench scraper as I've done here. Totally up to you, whatever you find is easiest and works fastest. If you're enjoying these videos, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We upload a new cake decorating video every week. Going in again with the shortening to stick on my panels. You can use water instead, it will do the trick just as well. Place them side by side, alternating in color, and as you get to the very edge, just trim off where it meets the fondant. For the very corner, I just folded the Lego piece over and trimmed off the excess. Notice how the panels aren't propped on one directly on top of the other. I am making sure that the next row starts halfway through the bottom panel, so it kind of looks like bricks rather than being one directly on top of each other. For the very top, you can just cut off the excess, or you can cut a shape that is the general shape of what is missing in the section, kind of try to feed it through that way, whichever is easier for you. Here, for example, I've cut the yellow down to exactly the shape that needed to be. Now for the thrilly area that will divide the cake from elegant to Lego. It's a white piece of fondant, and I've taken a fondant tool here. I'm not sure what it's called. I will link it in the description box below. Mine kind of broke because I was a little too enthusiastic with the pressure I was adding. And I have a sponge pad underneath. This is going to help curl up the very edge. So just roll it over until it curls up. Move forward, but still overlapping ever so slightly on where you just rolled, and that's what's going to cause it to curl upwards and give you that beautiful thrill or frilly bits. Turn it around, go over on the other side so you have a double-sided frilly ribbon, and attach it onto your cake with either some water or some edible glue. You can make edible glue by mixing water and Tylose powder, or even by mixing water and glucose syrup as well. Makes a pretty strong glue. Connect it on both sides where the Lego meets the elegant, and then lift up the very edges so that it frills out like a curtain. Give it a bit of a pinch, and then go into the middle with a single-sided frilly ribbon section. Once you're happy with that, add on your Lego pieces. You can make them out of fondant. It's a lot easier just to buy the toys and stick them on. And that is how you create a half and half Lego and elegant wedding cake. Thanks guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed making it. I'm off to deliver this baby. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do so. We upload a new video every Tuesday. Bye for now.